Okay, so good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time of the day it is that you may be viewing this um, Zoom meeting recording. I decided to just do a very quick and brief introduction in actual fact, firstly, thank all of those organizations that did attend the meeting on the 1st of July. This, of course, is the meeting which Disaster Relief CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team's NGO, sent out to almost 20 residents associations, residents forums, block watchers, neighborhood watchers in and around Region C, and in particular around the Constantia Kloof area, being where I'm centrally based. And of course, I will move out and extend over the entire area of Region C, which is one of the areas within which Disaster Relief CERT would, in actual fact, be operating. So we sent out an invite regarding disaster preparedness participation and a campaign within the city of Joburg, Region C. That was our topic. And I wanted to formally introduce Disaster Relief CERT and provide insight into our involvement in Region C of the city of Joburg, and in particular within your local community as a whole. Also to explain the need for the recruitment of volunteers who will be able to assist in times of disaster. And of course, I'd just like to point out that's not just specifically for Disaster Relief CERT volunteers, but in order for us to also encourage people to volunteer and get involved in various block watches, neighborhood watches, residents associations, and residents forums, because each and every single one of you plays a critical and crucial role within the disaster risk reduction requirements that need to be met within the disaster management cycle overall. And of course, neighborhood watchers, block watchers, and of course, private security industry service providers also play maybe just a small role, but a crucial role within what we need to accomplish. So this was just really an introductory meeting. The third point that we wanted to highlight was to ensure that social media wasn't used as a tool for disinformation or for sharing information, which may result in a loss of life. And I must admit, I don't think we covered very much of that during the course of this meeting. But then also we did look at discussing the need for community-wide effort, especially here in the western parts of the Johannesburg, not just amongst your own association or forum, but to address the overall preparedness of the security, and of course that's the safety and security of the community. And in this instance, I refer to Constantia Kloof, the suburb, as the community within which several forums, etc., might in actual fact exist. So my initial letter actually addressed the particular area within which we might operate, not necessarily Constantia Kloof. So my introduction letters, wording and grammar may have been a little bit inappropriate at times, for which I apologize. And then finally, to highlight the availability of additional resources which may be of benefit to the community, and in this particular case, the number of volunteers that are currently registered with Disaster Relief CERT. So on that basis, I would like to thank AfriForum Roodepoort, Florida Blockwatch, Florida Hills Neighborhood Watch, Florida Hills Residents Forum, Florida Park Neighborhood Watch, and Vleerhof Residents Forum, who did in actual fact attend the meeting. The remaining residents associations and residents forums, block watchers, neighborhood watchers, support groups, ward communities, etc., that were not able to attend. Like I say, I hope that you will find that this video will be beneficial to bringing you up to speed and providing you insight into why it is that we need to do a follow-up meeting and actually come together and do some proper planning and preparing for whatever might happen in the area, over and above of what you might be dealing with within your own residence forums, associations, neighborhood watchers, block watchers, etc., etc. So I look forward to actually being able to be involved with each of the communities in and around the Constantia Kloof area, and in particular within Region C. However, I must point out, being a national non-government organization, we actually deal with matters on a national level and not just on a regional level, for example, within Region C. So on that note, for the members of the associations or the residents forums, as well as to the general residents who are not members of RAs, RFs, Blockwatches, and neighborhood watches, I can only hope that you will, in actual fact, all come together, support your RAs, support your RFs, your Blockwatches, and your neighborhood watches. Get involved with them, get involved with any of the disaster relief organizations, not just disaster relief CERT, there's the South African Red Cross, there's Give to the Givers, you can join SARSA, the Search and Rescue ZA organization, K9 Search and Rescue, in our case, not necessarily Wilderness, but Mountain Club of South Africa is another very good avenue for you to get involved. So on that note, please sit back and just take in everything that has been discussed in the following video. Greetings to you all, and I look forward to the next meeting with you. Cheers. This is Chad Milam, Director of Disaster Relief CERT, saying thank you. Okay, so let's get started here. We'll deal with this as we move forward, but Vanna, I do agree with what you said there. And during the course of the morning, a lot of people indicated that they would in actual fact be attending. However, that being said, I think let's get started. So for Stanton, Lawrence, Casper, Werner, Lorenzo, and Cindy, welcome. Thank you for joining the meeting this afternoon. I just need to let it. Yeah, okay. Well, unfortunately, you should have just stayed on. I mean, you know, there was no need for Purvis to leave the meeting ultimately. It wouldn't have been a 5-minute meeting in any event, and even though we're starting late, we can still catch up. But anyway, let's move on. Thanks for joining the meeting. I need to inform you that it is being recorded. That way, at least, we've got something to fall back on at a later stage as well, especially, you know, when it comes to any questions and answers. So I think before I introduce CERT, let me just explain my background briefly. I'll go back over 30 years, almost 40 years. I was trained by the International Committee of the Red Cross in disaster relief and management during my tenure with the South African Red Cross.
We just lost you, Chad.
Yeah. Just hold on. Are you sure you lost me? Because I can hear myself coming up on the tablet.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, who was that lost me there? Lawrence, just put out on the group there, find out who dropped off of the meeting quickly, because it's definitely not my side. It could be a problem on
Sorry. Yeah, it's my side. Apologies, Lorenzo. I just dropped off back.
Okay, welcome back, Lorenzo. I couldn't see who it was. I was actually on another screen. Okay, so basically, during my tenure with the South African Red Cross Society, I was trained in disaster relief and management by the International Committee of the Red Cross. My total volunteering time accumulated up almost 30 years in total, 20 of which 18 to 20 with the Red Cross itself. As a Red Cross operations manager, I was involved in many of the relief operations pre-Mandela release, and therefore a lot of the conflict, etc., etc. I also became an appointed first aid instructor and attained emergency medical assistant once. So I've got a bit of a, quite an extensive medical background as well, having worked casualties like Joburg Gen, Natalspruit, Baragwanath Hospital, and most definitely Alexandra Clinic on a weekly basis. So that there's a very short introduction into my background and where I'm coming from. Now, I'm actually at this moment in time looking at introducing, as per the letter of invitation that I put out, introducing disaster relief CERT as a whole, specifically within the Constantia Kloof and surrounding areas as a starter. There's a reason that I've decided to do it in the manner that I've done it, by reaching out to the various organizations, whether they are residents forums, residents associations, Blockwatchers, CPFs, or otherwise, purely because of the fact that there's a lot of misconception of who, what, where, when, and how, and where we fit in as a whole. Now, initially, Disaster Relief CERT was in actual fact formed as a business-based organization in 2017, at which point we started growing our volunteer base. And by 2018, we'd in actual fact started looking at registering as an official non-government organization. However, in order to do that, we did feel it was best to put together policies and procedures and get the paperwork and the groundwork in play before we in actual fact proceeded along the NGO route itself. As a result of that, 2019 saw us now sitting down and actually putting together the complete plan to register as a non-profit company as well as a public benefit organization with SARS, which is what we duly did in May, or at least in May 2020, we're able to get it through. We were in actual fact delayed as a result of the outbreak of COVID-19 and the national declaration of a state of disaster in South Africa. That being said, we initially registered as MCOM Assist CERT, CERT being an acronym for Community Emergency Response Teams. The concept behind the entire operation is that we, in actual fact, build volunteer teams made up of local community members, and this is where the crucial part of CERT actually comes into play. Up front, I must stipulate, we are not, under any circumstances, a first responder organization. We are not here to replace any other organization, whether it be on a municipal, provincial, or government level. We are also not here to duplicate the services as provided by various other entities, for example. And I'll just use it as an example. Where you got a Blockwatch or a neighborhood watch, we are not here to come and do the same thing, because that's not our purview at all. Disaster Relief CERT has got one mission and one mission only, and that is to prepare volunteers to be able to assist local communities in times of disaster. Now, I know that a lot of organizations are going to say, but that's what we're doing. I believe a lot of organizations are contributing to some aspects of disaster management and some aspects of the disaster management cycle. So I'm not going to dispute the fact that a lot of organizations will already be contributing, which is great. I definitely do encourage it and all the rest of it. So as CERT, our prime goal is to group together volunteers within local communities. And we are looking at having a minimum of 10 volunteers per geographical area, whether that be a suburb, whether that be a ward or otherwise, but that's a minimum of 10 people. And of course, the entire concept behind the teams is that each and every single one of the volunteers operate in accordance with the Disaster Management Act, which is official legislation. That is something that not one of the organizations that were invited to the meeting today are compelled to abide by or work within the constraints of that legislation, yet we are as a non-government organization. And I think that is where we are separated in terms of functionality from all of the other organizations. In addition to that, we further have to comply with, on a national level, being a national NGO, we would have to comply with all of the national the provincial and the municipal disaster management frameworks and disaster management plans that are implemented throughout the country. Now, I'm quite sure those of you that are leading your own particular teams can appreciate and understand just what type of task I have ahead of me, not only as a founding incorporator of the non-profit company, along with John Groom and Stephen Reynolds. The three of us formed the non-profit company without members, yet we have started the recruitment process of registering volunteers throughout South Africa. So as we sit at the moment, we are a team of 75 members. I've got volunteers in Cape Town, Potchefstroom, Nigel Springs, including the Free State, and the vast majority of them, of course, are in the Johannesburg or Gauteng area as a whole. We now need to branch this out, which is one of the reasons that I've decided to call all of you guys together. I'll explain why in a minute. However, I need to again reiterate, we are not a first responder organization. We are not here to replace anybody. Our prime goal is to prepare local communities to be able to assist each other in times of disaster. And that definition of disaster is clearly laid out within the Disaster Management Act. And that is all that we actually respond to. In terms of the disaster management cycle, we also have a responsibility as an organization, not only to prepare volunteers, but also to recruit volunteers in terms of our memorandum of incorporation. In addition to that, we also have that additional obligation to, in actual fact, train volunteers. And that is now where one of the bigger problems comes in, that volunteers, like your own organizations, may very well have to provide for their own training on a individual basis. Then finally, I think the biggest challenge and task that we have as an NGO is in actual fact to create awareness amongst local communities with regards to the potential risk of disasters. And this now becomes a very crucial and critical part of our involvement in the country overall. Remember what I've said, we need to comply with and work within the constraints of the Disaster Management Act, and of course the volunteer regulations that apply, and all the other bits and pieces that go with it. So if I've got to do this now as an incorporator and as one of the three directors and board chairman, I don't only deal with, let's say, for example, Florida Hills or Florida Park or Horizon, Constantia Kloof. I've got to deal with every single suburb throughout this entire country. Whereas in each of your individual organizations aspects, you may very well be dealing with the issue of, just your own particular area. Now, when we take a look at the overall concept of the disaster management cycle, there are many facets that need to be dealt with. And a lot of people actually only think of the most common ones like first aid or firefighting or, doing search and rescue, for example, especially when it comes to any structural collapses or anything along those lines, especially those of us that follow the news on the international basis. During earthquakes, we see these buildings collapse, etc., etc. And you've got hundreds of hands that go in there to go and do the rescue. Now, from our perspective and from my training, I must tell you that communities need to be aware of the fact that the Disaster Management Act specifies three particular types of volunteers. The first one is called a unit of volunteers, and these are the guys that are officially registered with the municipal, provincial, or national disaster management center. And they fall under the direct control of that particular center, wherever it might be. Then you get your general volunteers, and those are the volunteers that are registered as NGOs, etc., etc. So the volunteers come in through organizations such as the SA Red Cross, Give to the Givers. We could be looking at SARSA, old RU, Off-Road Rescue Unit, which is now Search and Rescue ZA, Canine Search and Rescue, Wilderness Search and Rescue, and so the list goes on. I think I did mention Give to the Givers there as well. And then other NPOs or non-profit organizations, which is a totally different organization to a non-profit company, because the NPO, of course, is now registered in terms of the NPO Act, and they fall under a different aspect of legislation, whereas the non-profit company falls under the Companies Act. And of course, a public benefit organization has to comply with the Income Tax Act as well. And then, of course, if you are registered as an NPO with a specific task of undertaking disaster relief activities, then you, in addition to the NPO Act, the SARS Income Tax Act, or even the NPC Act, because an NPC can be a member of an NPO. I know it's all very confusing. At the end of the day, all of these particular aspects of legislation need to be dealt with. And it is on this basis that I felt it was now necessary for Disaster Relief CERT to actually introduce ourselves formally to organizations such as yours, whomever you may represent. And the reason for that is, firstly, to dispel any fears, worries, concerns, bad attitudes. And I'm going to be quite honest. A lot of people have got a bad attitude towards any type of involvement in an area, you know, and this unfortunately doesn't play very well amongst the residents itself. To give you an example, Blockwatch members do things specifically for the benefit of their local community, whereas CPFs are doing the same thing. But residents associations, residents forums, you guys actually represent your paid up membership or your membership in whatever basis you in actual fact register your members. To be quite honest, I must admit, taking off my CERT hat and just being a typical resident of a community, I don't foresee a RA or an RF actually taking on members free of charge. There might be a couple of special cases because you guys have got expenses, and that is the whole purpose of an association. As long as you are properly constituted, your members have to abide by your constitution, but you don't in actual fact represent an entire community, even though you in actual fact might utilize the community name. I do not make this statement in a derogatory manner in any circumstances at all, but from a legal perspective and a legal standpoint, you can only represent your paid up membership. And that is where we now find ourselves in a situation where you'll have a residence forum representing X amount of people within a community, households, for example. To give you an example, Constantia Cliff, 1,666 odd residential properties. There could be a residents association that might only represent 400, let's just say, for argument's sake. I'm not giving any specific figures because I don't know what the RF in Constantia Cliff represents. But let's say, for example, they did represent 400. That means that I've got 1,200 residential properties who have got no representation whatsoever. And this is why Disaster Relief CERT needs to come in as a neutral and impartial organization in order to be able to prepare volunteers, train volunteers, and above all else, create an awareness of the potential risk for disaster within our local communities. Now, one of the things that has come out in the last, since 2015, funny enough, has been the introduction of what is called the Sendai Framework, and there is an obligation on countries worldwide under various UN resolutions. That's another thing Disaster Relief CERT needs to comply with or abide by or be aware of or work within the constraints and whatever other stipulations might in actual fact apply there. Those are some of the aspects that might not be carried over into the Disaster Management Act. However, what has now transpired is a lot of emphasis has been put on disaster risk reduction. It's a totally different ballgame. It's becoming proactive instead of reactive. And in order to do that, we need to fully understand what is happening within our communities. So we need to, as an NGO, comply with that as well, look at that and be able to deal with it. However, we can't do this on our own. To be quite honest with you, I cannot reach out to 1,660 residents in this area and to just have a look at like Constantia Kloof and the surrounding areas. We probably got a population of 200,000. I don't know. I haven't actually had a look at that, and I should. Just to give you an idea, I can have a look at the census documents, and if for some reason I do hit a blue screen error, I will just switch over directly to the tablet, so there might be a little bit of a delay with regards to switching over. So if I take a look at the Roodepoort area, that will just give us a rough estimate of the size. That's 3,226,000 population in Roodepoort, with 109,000 residential properties. Ladies and gentlemen, as an NGO, we need help. We need help through Blockwatches, neighborhood watches, RFs, RAs, on a neutral and impartial basis, to be able to get the message across to our communities as a whole. You are all community leaders by virtue of your organizations. And I think it needs to start with you at the top. Please bear in mind that we are obligated to follow the COJ, or City of Johannesburg's disaster management plan. So as the directors will meet with a COJ disaster management, whatever we learn, whatever we need to carry over, we need an avenue to carry it over in order to get the message out. Now, out of everybody in the Roodepoort area, if let's say, for example, 50,000 houses or residential households are represented through the RAs, RFs, block watches, CPFs, neighborhood watches, and any other community group that comes together, then it still means we've got a shortfall of 50,000. Now, you heard me at the beginning of this meeting say that I originally formed MCOM Assist CERT, and we registered as a non-profit company as MCOM Assist CERT. But last year, the directors took the decision to change our name to Disaster Relief CERT to be more self-explanatory. And it is on this basis now that over the past 4 years, we have in actual fact developed basic radio communications training, CERT induction training, disaster area damage assessment training, which is a critical part of the disaster risk reduction process. This is where we need, within our communities, volunteers, registered volunteers who are properly and correctly trained to go out and to do a complete assessment and create a community-based risk profile summary of the areas within which we reside, so that we can in actual fact identify all the potential risks in our areas and move that up to disaster management for incorporation in the COJ, in our case, disaster management plan. What I'll do at the end of the meeting, I'm going to post a preliminary assessment that I did specifically on the Constantia Kloof area, to give each and every single one of you as community leaders an idea of what is required. And I want to tell you that the meetings alone, I spent in excess of 100 hours. Stanton attended one of them, so he's a statistic of almost 3 hours at close on midnight. So for those of you that in actual fact do watch the video, please understand that a lot of work is done. All right, so that being said, I want to just move on and explain to you that that is the general concept of disaster relief CERT. We are not here to take over or to duplicate or to do anything that is going to jeopardize anything that your organization does. However, what I would like to point out, especially when it comes to neighborhood watches, block watches, and CPFs, each and every single one of your volunteers and team members normally have family members who are at home. And I know, having been a volunteer for over 30 years and having gone through 2 different relationships because I was forever out doing duties, it causes a problem. And this is another area where disaster relief CERT can in actual fact reach out to your members, spouse, or family member, or husband, wife, partner, whatever you want to call it, and even children over the age of 16, and let them become involved in various other aspects that don't entail high risk, like security, being shot at, etc. So I just want to throw that in the pot for a little bit of thought. Now, as I said in my invite, I wanted to formally introduce CERT and provide insight into our involvement in the City of Joburg Region C. The Region C Advisory Forum will be revitalized at some point following the meeting that I have had with the Director of DM, COJ. Once that is done, of course, then we will be reaching out and trying to bring in all the organizations onto the Advisory Forum itself. However, that doesn't mean that organizations as yourself can't have input into what disaster relief CERT is doing, and we feed that information up and channel it that way. Now, the second point is that I wanted to explain the need for creating volunteers. We need in each geographical area, which is where I originally placed the volunteer structure. However, the City of Joburg wants us to look at a ward-based aspect. Now, each of you know the size of your wards. Now, Constantia Kloof, for example, is a very large ward. Sitting back and having a good analysis or doing a good analysis of the area, 10 volunteers are not going to cut it. Constantia Kloof is separated between the top of the ridge. I need 20 volunteers minimum. And then the bottom of the ridge, i.e. that down Jim Fisher's side into Beltreden Park. And then, of course, Ward 89 still continues into other suburbs like Fairlands and all the rest of it. So each of those little sections will probably need an additional 10 volunteers. So for me to now look at Ward 89, I in actual fact probably need a good 50 volunteers in order to carry out our disaster risk reduction functions. Again, I need to reach out and ask people for help. And hopefully through this type of meeting and further meetings, you can reach out to your members, their families, etc., and we start growing the team, start developing an overall disaster management plan for Region C. For those of you that don't know, Region C is a very large area. All of us on this group, everybody I've reached out to, basically from the November 1 Qualarina side right the way through to the Krugersdorp border, Main Reef Road, and all the way through to other side or just on Diepsloot side, that is Region C, and it's large. We need volunteers. And in the same token, I'm the first one to reach out to people and say, look, if you're not a member of an RA, join an RA. If you're not a member of an RF, join them. And if you're a male and you've got some savvy, join your CPF. Join every single one of the organizations that are available, and I'll tell you why later. Now, we need to get volunteers going across the board, not only within your organizations, but definitely within SA Red Cross, Give to the Givers, SARSA, right across the board. I'm not here to say specifically disaster relief CERT, but each one of the organizations, Canine Search and Rescue, they deal with dogs to do search and rescue. SARSA, they do the wilderness type mountaineering. What are the other words that I'm looking for here, Lawrence? I've just hit a blank spot. Swift water rescue, that type of thing, high angle rescue, and all the rest of it. That's not disaster relief CERT. I want us to come in on the lower level, do the DRR, have people that are able to reach out and do logistical support, transporting of equipment, medicaments, whatever, from point A to point B, transporting the people from point A to point B, assisting evacuations in the event an evacuation is carried out, setting up of evacuation shelters and therefore evacuation shelter management. And of course, we need to have the security aspect that ties in with that as well, because I mean, you can't put a group of people together in a community hall and not have any security. And this is where, again, I need to reach out to neighborhood watchers, CPFs, and of course, block watchers, because your guys will be needed to, in actual fact, secure those premises and the persons, the victims of the disaster. I think you get the general idea. I don't need to harp on it. Point 3 was to highlight the need of ensuring why social media should not be used as a tool for dissemination. On this aspect, you know, over the years, I've been monitoring everything that's been going on the groups. And some of my groups, one of my groups that I'm on, we've got 12,000 people on it. All right, I don't think that, well, if you guys have a look at your groups, you'll see you're probably averaging less than 100 people on a group, etc., etc., etc. The groups that I monitor, the exposure that I personally have is close to 25,000 people amongst all of our groups. That's countrywide. Outside of that, all I've noticed is the amount of disinformation, misinformation, and everything else that gets shared that can cause major panic. And it's going to kill our communities. I don't want to go into much detail on that. I think that's just something that we need to come back on, have a proper training session on, and find ways on how to, in actual fact, overcome it. In order for any of this to work, and I think each of you will agree with me, you know, you've got a neighborhood watch that's concentrating on one specific area. However, one of the things that come up, and I'm going to bring in the security aspect of it, you in Florida Hills, and there's a break-in in Florida, but there's also a spillover and a splashover and, you know, a run over, whatever you want to call it. They run from Florida into Florida Hills, and then Florida Hills doesn't know about it. There's no coordination on a much wider aspect or community-wide effort is not being placed on how we deal with things. And for me personally, the security of our areas is the exceptionally good measuring point or unit of measure to decide whether or not we are ready for a disaster. And as we stand at the moment, the answer is no. You'll notice in my assessment out of 4,500 residents in Constantia Kloof, I categorically state 4,000 will be killed during times of an earthquake or a tornado coming through Constantia Kloof alone. And I did that deliberately because I firmly believe we will kill 4,000 people because we cannot coordinate our activities at all. Needless to say, I'm not being funny on that. Just remember my training. My training takes me back to being able to provide disaster relief and assistance in large-scale communities. I am trained to deal with 400, 500, 1 million, 2 million people that are displaced during times of disaster. That's my level of training. And the overall management right the way down to providing a loaf of bread to a family. That includes medical, search and rescue, recovery, mortuary, identification of bodies, burials, and everything else that is involved in between it. So to lose 4,000 in Constantia Kloof is not a problem at all. So I said that, you know, under point 4, I wanted to look at the community-wide effort with regards to the security aspect. Here's something that I firmly know no organization has actually considered. And I actually want to end this introduction and meeting on the following note. And to show you just how serious I am, let me turn my video back on. Okay, I'll have to clean up what I look like there. Give me a second. Turn that one off, turn that one back on. And of course, yes, there we go. I'm laid out, nice, relaxed on the beach. Yes, food for thought, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Selby is joining us. Let's just get Selby in here quickly. All right, I don't know, that's taking a bit longer, but we'll make it available to Selby later. Cindy, I'm actually thinking at the end of this, if you and I could just have a telephonic conversation briefly, but I want to end off on the meeting with the following thought. In the last 10 years, disaster management having changed from a reactive, responsive nature to a proactive disaster risk reduction concept has actually brought about a complete change, which is now being documented with reference to the Sendai framework. I'm not going to go into much detail in it. However, one of the categories that has been introduced into the Sendai framework is something called civil unrest. And this was pretty amazing to me because of the fact that being a humanitarian and having been trained in the Geneva Conventions, i.e. international humanitarian law, this was actually quite an interesting facet of change within the disaster management structure and style, where civil unrest has now been injected and plugged into the disaster management processes. And this plays a critical role. And it is because of that that my interest as a resident of the community, not as a director of CERT, but as a resident of the community, when we look at the amount of crime and crime-related incidents that we are dealing with on a daily basis throughout the area, and the need for coordination and sharing of intel, etc., 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 there's one thing that we are missing when it comes to disaster management. And that is, what are we going to do as a community during times of civil unrest? 2021, Durban, June 2021, civil unrest actually made an impact on government institutions, which has not been carried over to neighborhood watches, block watches, residence forums, residence associations, or CPFs. And here's the question that I'm going to close on. In the event at the western side of Joburg, please take note, this is not the West Rand. The West Rand is on the other side of Krugersdorp and incorporates places like Western area and, well, that's Randfontein and that side of town. This is the western side of Johannesburg. My question is, if the western side of Johannesburg were to experience civil unrest as we saw in KZN 2 years ago, how would we deal with it as a community? I'm not just talking about Constantia Kloof. I'm talking about Helderkruin, Witpootjie, Horizon, Discovery, Florida, all the way down to Qualarina. In other words, the entire Region C. That's the first question I want you people to sit and think about, and just think about. But there's an additional one that I need to consider. I'd like each and every single one of you, especially the CPFs, the block watchers, and the neighborhood watchers, to calculate how many security personnel would be required on the western side of Johannesburg or within Region C. How many security personnel, private security service providers, neighborhood watch members, CPF members, Blockwatch members, and SAPS members, how many of those categories of security personnel will be required to secure our food source within Region C? That is my question. And on that note, I am actually going to stop the video for a second, and I'm going to ask you all just to give me 30 seconds. I just need to grab my jacket again. And at the end of it, when I come back, I want to open the session up to a quick Q&A. Give me a minute, please. Okay, there we go. Fantastic. I've got a jacket on now. My apologies for that. I think let me start with, as I see you guys on the screen, if there's any questions, Selby, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I know you come in on the, yeah, let's do an audio check. Hello, Selby.
Hi, how are you, Chad?
All right, thank you. At least your audio works. Selby, I know that you come in on the tail end of it, but the video will be available. So I think I'm not going to ask you if you've got any questions per se. You heard, you know, sort of the end tail. So if there is something that you would like to question or whatever, I think this is a good opportunity. Let me start with you. Is there anything you'd like to ask quickly?
Now, at the moment, let me not ask. Let me just go through whatever that you're going to send me. And first of all, before I go in details, I'm sorry for being late. I was in Hoogis. I just came back now. So I'm sorry about that. But I will ask on the WhatsApp after I've already viewed the video so that I can be able to know what I'm asking.
Okay, fantastic, Selby. That will be great. Let's move on. Stanton, I know you've been through, well, as I pointed out, our meeting with Dirk was almost 3 hours long here, leading up to midnight. But is there anything you'd like to throw in the pot at the moment?
Thank you, and thank you for your effort and for the invitation. Yeah, one of my big concerns, and this is something that I think you know, people are not really cognizant of, is the more that we've been responding to various different types of events. In terms of the neighborhood watch, we've been going out and attending medical things and fire things and whatever. But there's literally a criminal underlying element in every single one of these. There's so much opportunistic crime. We've had people that have helped somebody try to empty their house out while the house is on fire, and half of the stuff goes over the wall, and opportunistic criminals literally run off with stuff. Vehicle accidents where before the first responders arrive, guys literally steal whatever's in the car, and the looting of vehicles and all that kind of thing. So I think that the security element particularly actually needs to be involved in every single type of emergency, because of the fact that we have so many opportunistic criminal elements that try to take advantage of every single situation. And you know, I've just seen so many times that we respond to things and there isn't a security component because it's not necessarily a police type of emergency. So that's just something that I wanted to throw in.
You know, Stanton, I think that's a very valid point. And I know that you, Dirk, and I had gotten together sort of in the initial stages of you setting things up. And I do recall stating at one time, monitoring the Zello network during the hurricane season in Florida in particular, Florida, Louisiana, that type of area. I did mention that we get many a report that during the flooding, you got people out in boats going and stealing the TV sets while the occupants are still sitting on top of the roof. So that is a very valid point. And I mean, it's leading into a disastrous situation as a whole, even though it's not considered a disaster at this stage. But this is the type of the community-wide effort that I would like to start implementing, not only from the CERT perspective, but also as an individual within the community. So that there again, once I've sent out that assessment document, I want to bring in the security cluster, if I can term it that, without it being the state security cluster as a whole. I need to find a different phrase for that, whereby we can all get together and, maybe put together a much broader and wider aspect, because that security side during times of a disaster needs to be properly coordinated, and it most definitely needs to comply with all the legislation and requirements of the DMA, the frameworks, and the various plans, in our case, COJ. So, yeah, excellent question that I think those that haven't attended need to be aware of. Let's move on. This is the purpose of the meeting. We're going to get more insight. Casper, let's throw it your way. And I hope he's not the friendly ghost.
Well, friendly ghost. Everybody wants to know if I'm a friendly ghost. When it comes to the security here in Florida Park, for that matter, we have a lot of security companies here, and I'm part of the. I'm here in Florida Park for the last, let's say, 5 years now, and I've joined the Florida Park Watch Group from the beginning of this year. And me patrolling, I will normally go and patrol anything from 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night till about 3 o'clock next morning. I'll do about 2.5 hour shifts. And I've got a theory, and I don't know if I'm correct here in our area, and hopefully I'm incorrect by saying so. But the security companies here, they don't do patrols. If the Blockwatch group's not doing patrols, there will be nobody doing patrols. They will always be on hand. You must always phone them or send a WhatsApp message, whatever the case may be, wherever there is need for them, or you need them in a certain situation. I mean, in our area, you can contact SAPs, you can contact SAP here in Florida Park. You are quite lucky if they will pitch up the next morning. So yeah, it's quite important to get as much people involved in the Blockwatch and in your area involved in the security setup, and that's only what I see in this little time of space that I'm involved in the Florida Blockwatch, and it's quite concerning to me. There's also very little training to anybody in the Blockwatch scenario, what to do in a certain scenario. I would love to see that there is training for Blockwatch people, and I would like to know where to go for this training.
Yeah, Casper, again, excellent input, and I think moving forward, overall, and by growing the network, these are the types of questions that must be presented. They must be discussed, they must be negotiated, and solutions must be found for each and every single one of the concerns. Just as a matter of interest, when it comes to security service providers, those are private security service providers, as read here. I have yet to see an actual client agreement whereby the security companies are obligated to do patrols. And this, of
There's none in the contract.
course, they're not. They are only there to, in actual fact, respond to their own client activations. And it is on that basis that as a volunteer, as a resident, as a director, my advice to communities is quite simple. Get involved in your NHWs, your Blockwatches, and your CPFs.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. Because you...
As I always say to the people here in Florida Park, is when you leave your gate, when you leave your front gate, you automatically already need to observe what's happening around you. If you don't do that, then you expect someone else to do it for you. But be safe wherever you go. If you leave your front gate, you need to start looking after yourself. You need to start observing.
No, absolutely, I agree with you on that. And it's something that we need, we need to be able to share information on a more global platform. When it comes to the crime, for example, what I've tried to make changes on our CK anti-crime group is to bring up the surrounding areas. I try and keep that group as strict as possible where incidents are reported and shared, and it's up to the security companies in the area to actually come up. But that is something I didn't want to discuss at this particular meeting. We can do that as a follow-up. I want to move over to Vanna. Vanna, anything from your side?
Chair, thank you for the opportunity. I think there's a lot that can be said, and there's a lot that was said, and I listened to the comments and the suggestions and so forth. Now, I think currently the common disease within the communities is the expectancy that the security companies must be there for them 24/7, which is not going to happen. And yes, we can see on all the relevant groups that it's very appreciative that they do respond to stuff where they don't even get an income from. And we must understand and respect that they obviously function from clients that that pay them a monthly premium. However, it is nice for them to get involved and to be there. But the problem is when it comes to security within the communities, I love your initiative and I fully stand for that, because we obviously need to have certain plans and strategies in place for when something happens, not to have plans and, sort of jinx yourself that this must happen in order to practice that. But, the thing is, and I think anyone on this call and everyone on this call can vouch for it, that there's a lot of, can I say, dysfunction within all the community organizations, neighborhood watches, neighborhood groups, whatever, because the problem is everybody nowadays wants to be a hero. So I create my neighborhood group and I want to look after them. I've got minimal resources, but I expect them to pay for everything. And then when, sorry to say, when shit hits the fan, then we're going to call in the security companies to come and resolve it. So the problem that I have is there's very minimal that's willing to say, listen, let's stand together, let's work together, and let's get a solution to this. Because together we can do more. But unfortunately, we've got a lot to say about this one, we've got a lot to say about that one, and this is that, and whatever. So for any of this to actually work and move forward with, we need to stand together and we need to leave our differences and our opinions and whatever, and then move on.
Wow. Vanna, listen, you and I need to get together on a personal level. I mean, you understand that I've got some sort of connection there with Fani. So, on that side, I'd like to invite you to a private meeting. I mean, anybody in this community is, and those that are on this particular group are more than welcome to come and meet with me. And you're going to actually see that when I send out the document a little bit later, and when you do go through it. Vanna, what you've just described there about, let's all be heroes and what. I'd just like to read this quickly. This is part of my preliminary assessment. I said the manner within which WhatsApp and social media has been utilized by communities as a death trap of its own accord. I recently termed the phrase closed group syndrome to describe the general purpose of these platforms. Closed group syndrome for me has now taken on the meaning of where no one may assist or provide solutions. Otherwise, we have nothing to moan about. Okay, I think not at all. Lorenzo, any questions? Oh, I just wanted to go back on your expectancy. Yes, Vanna, this is a serious problem on the groups. They are expecting, even non-paying clients are expecting the security companies to, get involved and do this and do that and do everything else. And yeah, that is something, again, it's why I decided during the last 6 months in particular, looking at the security aspect on a day-to-day basis is crucial to the disaster relief side of it, because if let's just say, Cindy, for example, I'm going to play on probably motherhood and say your daughter signs up as a registered CERT volunteers, and something happens and we send her in and she gets deployed and she's willing to go out, and then we can't secure her. Are you as a mom going to be happy with that type of thing? So we all have to come together across the board. Vanna nailed it there. Lorenzo, let's go over to you. Any questions at this point? Or
no, thank you. This was very informative. All I can say is overwhelming as well. I'm sitting here and realizing like there's a lot of things that myself and probably the community don't know and probably not prepared, which is a concern. Obviously, questions like training and how do we communicate and how do we get members involved. Now, those are all questions I'm sitting with, which I know that information will be provided. So all I can say is that this has raised the level of awareness, and it's like, we're really not prepared as a community, even the sub-communities within this area. I mean, we do collaborate to an extent, but how well are we prepared to to work together? So it's fascinating. It's overwhelming to be honest with you. Just because there's a lot of things that I personally don't know, and probably how do we convey that to the rest of the community? So yeah, I don't have any specific question other than just to say thank you and keen to assist where we can.
All right, now I haven't forgotten about Cindy, but Lawrence knows this from me. Usually when I turn my video on and I start facing my camera, what I've got to say is like serious, beyond serious. And this is usually the point where if I could take people and shake them and throttle them and give them a good couple of claps and get it into them, this is the point of where I am when I do this. Firstly, you said overwhelming, and this session alone has created awareness. I want to say thank you for that on a personal level. That means that I have already accomplished our goal as disaster relief CERT to create awareness, even if it's by one person. I want to go back to the 24th of December, 2022. The 23rd of December, I was busy putting together the training module, the video training module for the disaster area damage assessment manual that took me 2.5 years to develop and write and publish. That I walked away from at 10 p.m. on the 23rd of December. And at 6 a.m. on the 24th of December, the first call came through of that LPG tanker blast in Plantation Road, Boxton. Had disaster relief CERT been active in the community at that time, if we could have saved one life, 43 people might have died, but not 44. We would have accomplished our goal. And if each and every single person who watches this presentation and meeting today, the recording of, if you can reach out and save one life, you have accomplished something a lot of people would not have been able to have accomplished. And that is where I want to take you as a community, lead you and guide you, help you, assist you, grow you, whatever the case might be. Because at the end of the day, training is crucial. Even Blockwatchers, You need training in a lot of areas, not just in crime prevention. That's where your SEPs, your CPFs should in actual fact be giving you that training. Your private security industry could be assisting in providing you that training. And my recommendation to neighborhood watchers and block watchers, each of you have got a function and a role. Reach out to the CPF in the area and get involved with them as well and get them on board to come and train. Get your SAPs stations on board to come and train you, depending on which precinct you're under. But you guys have got a lot of other responsibilities as well. It gets my goat up. Wait, I've got to put the camera back on. Cindy, I'm coming to you in a minute, I promise. As a paramedic, if there is anything that irritates the living daylights out of me, is there's an incident and everybody runs to that incident. And then, look, I used to drive ambulances and rescue vehicles and response vehicles 30 years ago. I know what it's like. You run to that accident. You know, you got 3 minutes to save a person's life. Ultimately, Lawrence, 3 minutes. And you've gone from living to clinically dead. You're not biologically dead. You are clinically dead. No oxygen to the brain for 3 minutes. But you are 10 kilometers away from the incident. And guess what? You get within 500 meters and you can't get into the incident. Why? The community, the block watchers, the neighborhood watchers, the SAPs, the other rescue vehicles have just parked and done whatever they want. There's no organization. But here comes in today's times, our RLS and ALS, they can't get to the incident. They can't get to the scene. Now I've got Emergency Control SA up on our groups as well. So there's a nice fire. Lawrence works with all of these guys. He knows what I'm saying. They can't get in because everybody's blocked the road. So block watchers, no disrespect. We need to come together and have a formulated plan. You guys have got a role. You've got a vital and crucial role, and I respect you for it. And I'm the first one that's going to tell the community, respect them. Vanna, what did you say about respect earlier? Respect the security companies, respect the neighborhood watchers and everything else. There's a lot of areas of training that everybody needs to go through. And as a community, we need to find the specialists in those areas and bring it together on a single platform. Last but not least, Cindy.
No pressure here. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it. You adding me to the call. Our biggest problem, I think, in our area is motivating people to volunteer. Stanton, when he started the neighborhood watch, he did get quite a few more people to join and to start patrolling when we needed it. But we do have a 24-hour dedicated vehicle because we do have an SLA with FADT. But yeah, you can't rely only on one vehicle in this area. Luckily, our area is not too big, but it's just the motivating, trying to get people to get involved. That's a big problem here. Because it's easier to throw money at it than yourself.
Cindy, you 100% correct. You know, when Lorenzo brought up this overwhelming aspect, I've had people, there we go. One of my favorites has just joined us, so let's get him on board. Let's just greet him, Mr. Stephen. Let's see, where are you? There you go. Now, still, Stephen, unmute and let's say hello.
How's it? Is anybody still here?
Yeah, there's a couple of people that are still here. Not many people attended. However, you did see the invite that I sent out to everybody on the executive board. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Stephen Reynolds. Stephen is one of the founding incorporators of Disaster Relief CERT. He is also one of our IT specialists. 4x4 enthusiasts. I think he's a paddy diver, whatever that means. I don't want to ask personal questions. I might get embarrassed. But he's also a licensed radio amateur along with John Groom and myself, and a couple of the other volunteers. We've got about 30 radio amateurs, believe it or not. Radio communications is one of our fortes, but we, out of our existing volunteer basis, and Cindy, this comes back to your motivational side. How do we motivate communities to actually come together and to volunteer in various aspects? This is the million-dollar question. So if any of you have got a solution for it, please give me the million and I'll run with the suggestion for you. It is a difficult one. Now, during my involvement in Constantia Kloof over the last couple of months, I've had I've had community members flicking me, swearing me upside down, private messages you won't believe. I've been called childish, I've been called mad. I've had businesses and people retaliate, literally retaliate against me. I've had them at my gate bringing SAPS, threatening to arrest me. So yeah, these are not easy times that we are in. The only thing that I can recommend at the moment is that when we come together, I mentioned the anti-crime group in particular. If we can get together and share intel on the anti-crime group, the outlying areas do not necessarily need to be on the job group that I've got created and running, but especially on the anti-crime group, that, for example, Stanton, for example, you have a problem, you throw it out on the group. Well, to give you, ladies and gentlemen, a good classical example, Help 24 threw out a bolo on the Mustang that was hijacked 2 or 3 days ago, and the driver of the vehicle was kidnapped along with the vehicle. Well, that went far and wide. I even threw it out on the CRSA Gauteng jock, and we got information out there, although the vehicle was recovered. The suspect vehicle wasn't recovered, got lost on the highway somewhere. And then tie all this in with sniper and LPR cameras and. Well, what has that got to do with disaster relief CERT? Quite simply, through those LPR cameras, sniper, and all the rest of it, and the intel sharing, we will know about disasters that are occurring. Whether that disaster be in the sense of, hang on a second, even our CERT volunteers who are on the groups might in actual fact be able to identify, hey, there's the vehicle, there's the driver. Guess what? We could be saving a life outside of the disaster. Just because of the fact we are not a first responder organization, our registered volunteers, again, need motivation to become volunteers. Tell your communities, tell your groups, tell your residents associations, tell your residents forums. This is no longer a joke. As an RF, if your goal is to do A, B, and C, that's fine, do it. I'm not going to stop you. I have no right to. Nobody has that right. However, you can extend it further, even as an RF. What did you say, Cindy? Throw money at it. Well, every single organization needs money. Blockwatches, you need high-vis gear. You need to be identified. Your security companies operating in the area need to know who is who. You can't just have Joe Bloggs pitching up there and saying, well, I'm with Blockwatch and therefore I can enter your premises. Actually, no, you can't enter anybody's premises. In all honesty, even the private security industry may not enter your premises. And that's according to their very own code of conduct. They may not do anything unless there's a contract between you and that company. So Blockwatch, you can't just enter somebody's premises. You enter my premises, you might get shot. How do I know you Blockwatch? How do I know you're not a perpetrator that's coming in there along with the security company because you slipped in behind him? You know, who said something about training? Training is required. Werner, of course it is, across all levels. just on our day-to-day security aspect. And all of this, I'm going to bring my camera back on. All of this just leads up to the overall disaster risk reduction. Crime is killing our economy. That is a disaster, and it's classified economical disaster. It's classified as such. We still need to address it. In closing, as Stephen, you did come in late. The video will be available when I've produced it, and you can watch it there. I think we've just gone over the hour-long mark. Cindy, if you wouldn't mind just sticking around, I think once we've said our goodbyes and everybody's left, I'd just like to, I'll take it off of the recording, of course. I'd like to have a chat with you there. But I think at this moment in time, ultimately, for those that are currently on the disaster relief CERT info group that were not able to attend the meeting today, I would like to encourage you to attend the next meeting and listen to some of the questions that have been put there. Definitely take the overwhelming aspects, and oh boy, Lorenzo, I haven't even started yet. Dude, you want to talk about doom and gloom? I think I'm not the prophet, I'm the master of it, according to many people. No, it isn't that. It's my training that is going to start speaking volumes amongst this community as a whole. And as I said in the beginning, Stephen, John, and myself have not taken on a simple task. Ours is on a national basis, and we need to start it here. I'm of the opinion that I need to train you. I need to train each and every single one of you to be able to take this this torch forward and find ways of scaring your community shitless if that's what it's going to take. Tell them outright. But you'll see the document that I've produced. Read it. That's only the beginning. And then, of course, I'll share the link that people can join, and we move it forward on the disaster planning process. And through that planning process, of course, the security aspect must be dealt with. However, to the rest of the members on the info group, my recommendation is that we actually set another meeting, and each and every single one of you give input now on your concerns and areas that need to be addressed. And hopefully out of the groups, 2 or 3 of you can come forward and start managing the information that comes out, and maybe assisting in looking at various aspects on the security. Personally, I cannot take that project on. My hands are full as disaster relief CERT. So, you know, I need somebody to, again, I've got to reach out and say, guys, ladies, gentlemen, I need help. And I think everybody is going to agree. Not only do I need help, you need help in other areas, and our communities most definitely need help. We need to get that message out. People are like ostriches. Fortunately, ostriches have heads in the sand. I don't know if there's a term for any other position. I haven't come across one yet anyway. I know I've got a couple of personal phrases that I don't want to put out on this recording. So in closing, anybody want to throw something in the pot? Otherwise, I'm going to bid everybody farewell. And Cindy, maybe if you stick around, Stephen, you stick around as well. I would appreciate it. Anybody else want to throw anything else in, ladies and gents?
Chad, if I may, I just quickly want to add something, especially when we're on the topic of security.
Yep.
So obviously we want to curb criminal activity, etc., etc. Now, I've said many times, and it's no disrespect to any security company. To have a security company looking after a house is awesome, but that is reactive. Because someone breaks into your house, they respond 5 minutes later, 2 minutes later, maybe they're sitting right in a park in front of your house, and they're able to be there within a minute's time, but just not early enough to catch them. Now, what happens? Now you obviously do your insurance, etc., call the cops, and everything carries on. How do we get to a point to know what is going on in your area, crime related? It's all good to do patrols, and patrols is very, very important.
Yeah. Just stick to what you do now because it's perfect.
I think it's the written. The written is what makes it bad.
Okay, there we go. Vanna, you've got a very valid point there, and that is something that again, as I said, I've been retaliated against. I'm not going to go into detail because I can tell you now, if I do, I think a lot of people are going to be rather shocked. Yes, it is something that you will see within the document that I'll send out to it is that I've met with. And with decent communications, there are ways of overcoming it. A lot of it comes down to, we also need to understand that security companies per se cannot in actual fact legally share information with the public. Not only in terms of raising a security risk level, but also in terms of the Protection of Personal Information Act. So there, we cannot expect the security companies to actually, on a public platform, share that information. What we can do through the JOC aspect and with moving forward, I think with the residents signing contracts that they are, they've got to provide permission that if something happens at my premises, my security service provider can share it with other security service providers or the security industry as a whole in order to attempt to, catch the perpetrators, that kind of thing. So it's a very sticky subject, this one at the moment. And my personal opinion is quite simple. Look, guys, here's my anti-crime group. You are under no obligation to post any incident, whether it be suspicious activity or a positive break-in at your premises, whatever the case might be. However, in the best interest of the community, share that information, especially, my alarm is going off. I see the perpetrators at my gate at the moment. Get it out on the group now. The other group members or the other members of the community should be up on the group. They can look out, they can become ears, they can become eyes, they can report updates. And of course, this will, of course, lead security companies or service providers to a point whereby we can, in actual fact, start initiating takedowns and arrests and all the rest of it. For the Constantia Kloof and surrounds area, I must tell you, it's a very new concept. I'm also in the process of trying to train the security officers on this one in this aspect, but we're getting some positive results. One of the things that we are definitely experiencing is the fact that a vehicle will be stationary at a particular point for several hours, or not hours, several minutes, and then the minute the report goes out, they shoot off like a bullet taking off for Mars or trying to destroy a Starlink satellite or something, I don't know. So we have to consider all of this. So the security aspect, I don't want to harp on very much at the moment during this meeting, but I think that the questions that are raised, the responses that I've already given here at the moment, will stimulate your mindset, whoever's listening to this video, to just think another step further. How do we deal with all of this? How do we tie this in on our day-to-day activities? How do we tie this in on a disaster risk reduction aspect? How do we take that and grow it into providing a solution to a disaster relief or disaster management plan as a whole? Because everything we do today, right now, is training for that disaster. Never, ever forget that. You play a crucial role today in whatever aspect of the organization you belong to. Your role is crucial and critical. However, you are only dealing with a little bit of a lot. And our crime rate has increased. We need to deal with it. We need an integrated plan. not just within our closed group syndrome aspect, because that is the number one killer. There's a lot to think about. Anybody else got any other questions? Because I can go on here for hours. Lorenzo, you'll have nightmares for a week if I carry on here at the moment. Anybody else got questions? And I don't say that lightly. I mean it. I'm seeing it amongst certain people around me. Even Lawrence and Stephen will say, hey, you know, Lawrence is one of my executive management members with Disaster Relief CERT. And then, of course, being a paramedic himself, for those of you that don't know, and the licensed CAA drone pilot, swift water rescue and all kinds of things that he doesn't like to talk about. He'll tell you. I'll shock you all. The thing is, we got to plan for the worst and hope we never, ever use it. Today, we're dealing with crime. And it's organized. What's going to happen in that disaster? That's the question. What are you as an RA and an RF and a Blockwatch and a neighborhood watch going to do? What are you going to do with your patrollers when they have to take care of their family first? Do you know what? This is a statement I keep making. If a tornado comes through Constantia Kloof, I don't give a continental shit about my volunteers in this area. And then they get upset with me, and then they want to say to me, how can you say that? You're not being respectful to us. And I'm saying to them, no, guys, you're probably dead. Why must I worry about you? I need to worry about the guys in Eldercane and the guys in Discovery and the guys that are in Florida. I need to be able to get them in because your family members might still be alive. Your family members might not be the victim of the crime. But one of them could be because you are the one that's the victim of the crime and you lying dead in the street. We need to be able to take care of your families and the living. That's where we need to put our effort. Do we need to prevent the crime? Absolutely. Like, can we prevent the disaster? Yes, we can. We can mitigate it. That's what disaster risk reduction is all about. So don't think crime and disaster risk reduction and disaster relief are separated. They are not. You are but one category. So through this meeting, I am seriously hoping that I'm going to be able to bring you all in. And give you a platform where you can share ideas and formulate plans within the security aspect of your communities, your residents associations, and your residents forums. RAs, RFs, you are a conduit into the family members that can be drawn into neighborhood watches, CPFs, and block watches. Right, are there any other questions or comments, or can we close the meeting? Lawrence? Okay, maybe he's timed out. Casper?
No, thank you, Chad. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the meeting. I would like to get involved. And as I said, I would very much like the training.
All right, training we are definitely going to start looking at on various aspects. CERT can provide training in certain disciplines. And even there, first aid training, not a problem. Level 1, 2, 3, we can do it. Not directly through CERT, but through DMB consulting that is available. I will share the training that I've already made available through Disaster Relief CERT and MCOM PDY Limited, which will be beneficial to all right across the board. Casper, thank you. Vanna, anything else on your side? As you can hear, my cell phone is going mad. I mean, as I'm sitting here at the moment, I think I have just received in the last 2 minutes the better part of about 30 messages. Vanna, anything else from your side?
Chair, I think there's still a lot to be said, but not for now. I think if I carry on longer with the school, I'm going to collapse from hunger. So I would just say thank you. But yeah, I think follow-up meeting on this is very, very crucial, especially when it comes to the training and the safety and security, etc. And then obviously link that in with CERT. And yeah, then we've got a winning plan.
Fantastic. Thanks, Vanna. Vanna, set up a time and come see me during the week, and we can chat on other areas as well, please.
Cool, we'll do that. Thank you.
Fantastic. If you guys want to drop out after we close or wait until everybody's had their comments. Selby, anything else from your side?
From my side, I just want to thank you, Chad. I think this is an eye-opener. And I think if we can get more training and in this area, I think it will be effective in us looking at the different aspects. Because at the moment, we were much more concerned of neighborhood watch and everything like that. But I think after the training, it's going to assist us to be able to be lifesavers instead of just only focusing on security aspect. And yeah, listening to everybody else, I must say big up to everyone. It clearly shows that there is dedicated people whom they just want to be involved in assisting their communities. And I really appreciate, and I think we can go further, and I think we will achieve a lot more. And to me, even now, I just caught you guys for the past few minutes, but I must say I am very much intrigued of the information that you just shared in a short space period of time. And it just gives me that oomph to learn more and to get to know more, so that I can be of a good help in my community. And thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, Selby. And yeah, I started to smile there when you brought up the lifesaver aspect, and I thought, yeah, you can't be the guy on the beach watching the blonde out in the water. You've actually got to take a proactive role and train and prepare and be ready as a lifesaver, because you never know, she might need mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. I just couldn't resist that one. Lorenzo, over to you for a closing.
No, I would just like to say thank you. Also keen to get involved, but not just me, because it's you know, you need to get the neighbors involved as well. So that's going to be my goal. I certainly don't want to do everything. Definitely going to beg and plead and nag and all of those kind of things to get more involvement from our side.
No, fantastic. And as I say, the video will be made available. There's nothing private and confidential in this one. You guys, all of you that are watching this video, it will be available as a YouTube a platform, or at least on the YouTube platform. Therefore, you can watch it without even having a YouTube account. It'll be under the Disaster Relief CERT link, which I'll provide. You can share it with not only your own members on whatever level, but other members of the community as well. That the more that the video goes out, the more the information goes out. This is how we create awareness. And as I said in the beginning of the entire discussion, it's not just to promote disaster relief CERT, but also each of your organizations. Cindy, anything in closing? Otherwise, I'm going to move on to Lawrence and Stephen, and then ask everybody to move off. Anything from your side again, Cindy?
No, I'm fine. Thanks, Chad.
Okay, Lawrence, anything your side?
Yeah, technical difficulties. No, it's just can it be a process to get everybody together and training and stuff. But small steps will eventually get us there, and everybody working together, and eventually to a semi-perfect Africa.
There we go. Perfect. Stephen, anything from your side? You muted, by the way.
Yeah, no, nothing, Chad. But you said you want me to hang around.
Okay, cool stuff. Stephen, thanks. Just stick around there, ladies and gentlemen. If you could all drop off, I'm going to end the recording now. I want to firstly say thank you very much to everybody for attending, and thank you to those of you that are in actual fact watching the video. Please feel free to make contact with me through the various groups or organizations. They can share my cell phone number. And of course, you can also have a look at our website, Disaster Relief CERT, CERT.org.za. And my cell phone number is 082-859-2684. And we can find a way of assisting and bringing people together. So on that note, I'm going to end the recording. I'm going to ask everybody to drop off now, except for Cindy and Stephen, please.